All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us in the Yellow Room for the first talk. This is Slack Hacks with Kelly Walton, and we'll turn it right over to her.
Well, great. Well, thank you all for coming. Like Gabe said, this is Slack Hacks, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some stuff that we can do in Slack. So just to, if anyone is interested, what I've done for this is I've set up like a demo workspace in Slack. And if anyone is interested in joining the workspace to play along, that's great. Certainly not necessary, but there's a bit.ly link to join. And I've also given you a link to the slides. I'm going to be going back and forth between Slack itself and the slides. So if it's easier for you to follow along, grabbing the slides, that's great. And there's also a few links in the slides that you might want for going forward too. So up to you, you can grab it. I'll introduce myself, Kelly Walton. I work for Isovera. I'm the VP of Digital Strategy there. I've been with them for about 5 years. And we are big fans of Slack. That's what got me interested in doing this topic. We're totally distributed right now because of the pandemic, but we've always been fairly distributed and have relied pretty heavily on Slack. And for a long time, we really just used the chat part just to communicate, and it's super, and I'm sure all of you are really familiar with those details. But there's some other stuff to it too that if you dig in a little deeper can really enhance your experience with Slack, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So I'll go over some real basics for Slack that I'm sure that you guys know, just to make sure that we're covering off on everything. Then what I'm going to get into is some things about managing your workspace, setting some reminders, calendars. We'll talk a little bit about custom messages, modifying search. Apps and integrations are really fun. We're going to take a look at those. I'll give you a taste of workflows, and then we'll talk a bit about other workspaces. So let's get into it. Okay, so in Slack, there are a couple of kinds of accounts that you might be familiar with. There's both, there are some platform differences. You can use Slack in your browser. That's primarily what I'm going to be doing in this demo. But you can also get an app for it. There's an app that works on your desktop. There's also a mobile app. You can also sync Slack with your watch, which if you have a smartwatch, which is pretty cool, or pretty disturbing if you don't want to be Slacked all the time. But there are lots of ways to use Slack. There are a couple of different types of accounts you can get in Slack. There's a free account, which is deeply functional. Almost everything I'm going to talk about today is in the free version. And that's what I'm going to be demoing today, is the free version. But there are some limitations to the free version. You can, if you move up to a paid version, you can see all of your messages for all time rather than a certain amount of them. There aren't as many restrictions on how many file sizes or how big the files are. There's, I think, limitations on some of the calls and things like that. So I'll point out some of those limitations as we go on the free version. But if you're just getting up and running for one for yourself, free is the way to go. And then you can decide if you want to upgrade. So let's take a look at Slack in the browser. I think you guys are all very familiar with what this looks like. Like I said, I set up this little dummy one, and I'm really talking to myself here right now. So it's just Isovera Kelly, which is my usual day job me. And then here's Nerd Kelly, who is doing the presentation. So we'll start out with just some real basics here. I think you guys are going to be fairly familiar with all of this. Let me just move some stuff out of the way here. Put this. Okay. So, when you send a message, you have all these little, obviously, WYSIWYG things to use. I think folks are probably fairly familiar with that. You can you can add emojis, you can attach things, etc. If you don't want to see the formatting, you can hide it if you want a really minimal kind of thing. When you can send messages publicly in a public channel. You can send things in a private channel. You can tell something is a private channel because it has this little lock on it, and you can send personal direct messages. One thing to think about that sometimes people don't realize with Slack is if you are in if you're in just a public channel, even if people aren't members of that channel, they can come join it. So if you have sort of private conversations you want to have, even if you're like, oh, there's only 3 people in this channel, anyone in your workspace can look at a public channel. So just think about that. If you're talking about anything sensitive, you can use a private channel. Once you create, when you create a channel, if you create it as a private channel, you cannot change it to public, but you can turn a public channel private if you would like to go, like if you decide that it's getting too, you know, sensitive and you want to make a channel private. But once it's private, you can't go back. Some of the, you know, really core functionalities, if, you know, there are messages, and then there are also mentions and announcements. So if you want to mention someone, obviously you would use the @ you can say like, I want to talk to Isobera Kelly here. So, you know, that will autocomplete for you. If you want to talk to everybody in that's around, if you want to get everyone's attention, you can say, okay, the folks that are online in this channel, you can say here. And that will notify everyone that's in your channel that's online. And then if you want to be even more sure that people get your attention, you can use channel, and that will notify everyone in the channel whether they're online or not. They'll get a notification about the message. One final way to get everyone's attention, and this is can only be done in the general channel, which is a default channel that everyone is added to when a Slack workspace is created, and when people join, they're all in it, is everyone. This only works in the general channel. This is a pretty nuclear option though. I wouldn't use it very lightly, because you are, especially if you have a larger workspace, you're going to literally be alerting everyone. So you be sensitive to the culture of your company, some or your group, whoever it is. Some places use channel pretty liberally. Some people hate channel, and you're like a pariah if you use it. So just think about your culture before you start blasting everybody. So you know, that's the core functionality of Slack, right? Sending messages back and forth in a Slack channel. But there's a lot more stuff you can do. So for example, you know, if you want to type something out and you're like, oh, I need to add a little bit of code here or something, you can't stick that in here because it's going to get all unformatted. So you can use your shortcut key. This is something, if you aren't using this little button here, this is really get to know this, because there's just so much use in here. We're going to be going back to this again and again during this presentation. But within the shortcut thing, if you want to say, for example, create a text snippet, okay, now we have a little pop-up that will allow you to put something in that can be of any number of formats. You can look, there's like a zillion different formats you can put in here, or you can just leave it as is. Maybe I just want to send like a little bit of HTML to my team. So maybe I will go in and I'll just grab it, and I will create a little snippet of it. I'll paste it in here. All right, so now I have like a little, like, you know, HTML, that snippet that I want to share with my team. And I can add a message saying, use this, please, and I will share it to whatever channel I want. So then once I've done that, it's right here. And what's kind of cool is, you know, you can still edit it right in here, which is neat. So say someone's like, oh, I don't want the title to be this, I want the title to be a title, and that kind of thing. So you can really use Slack as a collaborative kind of space for code, if that's something that your team likes to do together. So that's sort of a nice feature, but sometimes you want to have a lot of content, and neither the snippet nor the just general message format is really useful to you. So you could switch over to like a Google Doc or whatever, but something you can do that a lot of people may not be using is you could create a post. So a post, and it takes a second for it to load in here, is similar to, like, you know, a post in a you know, a blog or something like that. So you can add like any sort of, let me grab some copy here. You can post in, you can paste in like whatever. So say you look at all the stuff you can put in here. And then what's kind of neat is you can use, you can format it in a couple of different ways. Like you can use Markdown, which is nice. You can add things like, you know, checkboxes if you want to make a list for folks. You can add bullet points. Oops. Which is kind of cool. You can add, you know, it's not everything in Markdown, but it has like some the sort of core ones. Oops. So you can make like a, oops, there. You can make page separators, etc. So there are some nice things you can do in here. If you don't like using Markdown, you can also highlight text and a pop-up will come up to do some formatting like that. You can, you know, strikeout, you can add links, etc. So it's kind of cool that you can do all of this stuff here in right within Slack. What you need to do for other folks to see it is you'll want to pick this share, okay, and then you can pick what channel you want it to show up in. You can make it editable by other folks. You can also create a link to, so if folks that aren't even in Slack want to work in this. And then you can give a little context around it. So once you've shared it, you can go back into Slack and look in the channel you shared it in, and there it is. So again, that's a pretty handy way to, you know, keep a document right in Slack and be able to work with it collaboratively with your team without having to go to another tool. Also, something that you can do here in Slack is add files. So you can use this as sort of a lightweight file manager, or just, you know, share files back and forth. You can drag files right onto the message down there, and you can upload it, or you can use this little paper clip to attach. So one thing I like to do, you can add a text file. So now you have this text file here. So there's a lot of different things you can add. You need to take, I don't know off the top of my head what file types it won't take, but I'm sure like things that are executable won't work, but I didn't test that out before this, but you can add a lot of different files. And then if you want to find files, there's a pretty cool, this is something I didn't know about for quite a while, which is the file browser, which is a little thing that, you know, lets you search, you know, all the files that you have. You can filter by file type. There could be posts. You can look at just your posts. You can find any snippets people uploaded, if there's PDFs, documents, etc., which is nice. You can look, you know, by who shared it. You can look by where it's shared, what channel, or even in your direct messages, and the dates. So this is very handy because I know, like, once you get really into your Slack workspace and there's a million messages and you can't remember where that document was posted, this is a way better method for finding things than just kind of scrolling around and being like, what channel was that even in? So that's a nice a feature that you can use. Another way of messaging or sharing content with folks, obviously, is Slack calls. And that's a way to do, like, sometimes, you know, texting and sharing files just isn't enough and you need to really talk or see someone. So you can do audio or video chats in Slack. I'm not going to demo that because it's the call within the Zoom seems a little too Inception for me, but it's, you know, I think most of you are probably familiar with this feature. You can, you know, just hit this call button and call someone. The free version only allows you to do one-on-one calls, and you have to do it through like the direct message channel. But if you have a paid version, you can launch a call in any channel and have, I think it's up to 15 people on a call. And you can share screens, and you can, you know, just do video or just do audio if you wish. So those are all sort of the basic ways of communicating with each other. And then there's also, so those are your basic communication methods. There are plenty of shortcuts that you can use. And if I go back to the deck, I'll show you there's like a little bit of a cheat sheet on Slack for you. So there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and rather than demoing them, I'm just going to show this to you here. I find the best way to get to know shortcuts is just to use them until they become sort of your muscle memory. But there are some pretty, you know, jumping to a conversation is nice. Command N is a good one if you're on a Mac to just start a new message. You know, go to your preferences as Command Comment. That's a great one. If you save items, if you flag things as saved, which is a nice way to be able to find things as well, you can use Command Shift S to find that. So I would encourage you to go ahead and take a look at what some of those shortcuts are on your own, and teach yourself some of them, because it does make things move a little faster if that's your work style. There are also a great number of slash commands, which are, I actually have a link to those too as well. That are pretty cool that you can do. and I have, so there's a list of these, some options like for things that you can do as well. Like if you want to like right off the bat, archive something or expand something. Some of my favorites for slash commands are a quick way to set yourself as, away or do not disturb. So slash away will automatically set me to away, or if I do slash DND, it puts me on do not disturb, and I can pause all of my notifications for as long as I want, that kind of thing. What are some other good ones that I like? Mute is a nice one. If you're in a channel that's like really noisy, you can type mute and that will shut up the channel and you won't get all those notifications. If you don't really know what you're looking for, if you just hit slash by itself, it pops open the shortcut thing and you can kind of go through and find a bunch of things here. I think the most important one of all is shrug. Everyone loves shrug, right? So there are lots of those. And again, I would encourage you to go ahead and take a look at some of the ones linked here. So those are some basics as far as Slack usage goes. Let's move into managing our workspace a little bit. And this is some of the stuff that you have to dig to figure out. You can set up your preferences using in a couple of ways. The way I like to do it is just you can click on your little photo up at the top corner and open that up. And there's a couple of different things here. One of the things is setting your status. And within your status, this is something that shows up, there's a little blurb that pops up to show people what you're up to. And you can, pick a recent one. There are some default ones that you can have set up. And you can also edit them. These are called suggestions. These are ones that like maybe you want to use, but you can also just do like, pick your own. Whoops. So if I want to say that I am, I'll use like whatever. I'm happy today, so I'm going to say I am happy. That's my status. Okay. So that's one of the preferences things you can and should change. I think there is some other stuff in here that's interesting in your profile. This is what people see when they come and look at you. This is editable by you. In the paid version, you can add more fields. And I think that that's kind of a nice way to add things like, if you want to add pronouns or something else that's useful to folks in your workspace, you can add that here. Maybe you want to add their LinkedIn info or whatever it is. You can add, it's very easy to add other fields to this in the paid version, but in the free version, this is all you get. You can also get to your preferences here if you go under the name of the workspace and you go down to preferences. And then there are a lot of things in here. We're not going to go through all of them, but a couple of them are sort of interesting and useful. If you go under messages and media, a lot of folks really feel like Slack is a great way to just get out of using email entirely. And I think that that's true, but you may have like certain emails you still need to catch, right? Maybe your client insists on always emailing you directly, or there's something you're subscribed to with alerts or something like that. So if you go to the bottom of the messages and media section, you can have this forwarding address to forward to Slack. And what you can do is if you use like a couple of rules in your email sender saying like anyone from here is forward to here, you can get all those important emails sent right to Slack. So you probably never have to open your email again. And I think that makes people pretty happy sometimes. So I love that little feature and it's very useful. What else was I going to show you in here? There's tons of other stuff in here. We're going to come back to a couple here and there. But I encourage you again to go ahead and take a look under preferences and see what you want to change on your own. You can also change some of your preferences for how your sidebars present. So for example, the left-hand sidebar really manages all the things that you can see. And it can get you from channel to channel, from direct message to direct message group. You can use this more button here, which is to add other things to this. So you can pick and choose what you kind of tend to look at the most. Like, are you like really deep in your DMs? Like maybe you always want those to show up here. Or maybe you like the file browser and you want that always here so you can dig for files. only 2 will show here by default. You can go into your preferences and make that be, have others that are permanently there. But this is an often overlooked little feature, a way to make your workspace a little bit more efficient. On the right sidebar, which changes depending on what you're doing. But if you're like, for example, in a channel and you want to turn on or off your sidebar, you can click the channel name to see that. There's a number of different things you can do in there. You can see who's in it. You can see about. You can look at any pin files. There's not much pinned in this one, but so there's other stuff you can do here. You can also jump back to a date, which is really handy if you're like, oh, we were talking about this back in February, let me go, but there's like a million messages since then. So that's a really handy little thing. And there's a couple of additional things. Like this is where you might want to change it to a private channel, like I talked about. You can rename it, but that can be confusing for folks. So I wouldn't necessarily do that all the time, etc. So that's some other stuff you can do to set up your right-hand channel. Your right-hand sidebar, excuse me. There's a couple other things that aren't readily apparent that people can use. I love this button here, the history button. I overlooked this one for a long time, and when I discovered it, I was pretty psyched. I wind up bouncing back and forth between different conversations a lot, and this will take me right back to where I was. So if I was, talking to Rob, and then Matt pings me, I start talking to Matt, and then like, wait, where's I talking to Rob in this channel or that? Now I can like just go back to my most recent channels, and it's really handy. Just a quick way to get back to where I was if I get interrupted. And then the help is pretty helpful in a lot of places. There's a little quick start guide, and then they give you some recommended articles, etc. So that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Other settings that you can set up are if you go under settings and administration, and some of this, depending on how your site is administered, may or may not be available to you. So I'll talk in a second about permissions and stuff. But if you go into workspace settings, you have a lot of options in here too. And I encourage you to take a look at this on your own, but there are some things that I know people always ask about how to do. One thing that's kind of cool to be able to do is just to make your site a little bit more on brand is if you want to update your workspace icon, that's pretty easy to do right from here. You can just browse and upload an icon. So let's see, I would like to use maybe this Slack robot guy for my workspace icon, but maybe you would use your company's logo, etc. You can upload it, you can crop, etc. And then once it looks the way you want it to, you can save it. And then when you go back into your workspace, it will be, sometimes it takes a second to show up, but it will be there. There it is. Ta-da. So that's a little thing that's easy to do. If you go back into settings and workspace settings, we could talk a little bit about how the permissions are set. Basically, the permissions are fairly granular on here. I would recommend, if you're administering, to leave things as open as possible until you have problems, but you may differ on that if you have a really large crowd. But pretty much anything within Slack can be made just administrator only. Some things you need to have a paid account to be able to do that, but there's a lot of flexibility with your permissions. This is also where you might want to import or export data. This is an interesting feature. I don't know of too many cases where you'd be importing data to your Slack. Maybe if you switched over from another chat client, like HipChat or whatever, and you wanted to pull that in, or maybe you merged two things and you wanted to bring your Slack in from somewhere else, and you can import all of that. Export is also something that can happen where you can export all of your messages, and you can do that for a date range, or you can do it for all of your messages if you ever had the need to do that. I will note that this only exports public conversations. Things that are in private channels and things that are in direct messages do not get exported. The one notable exception to that is if you are an enterprise Administrators are able to export private messages, so don't assume that what you say in DM is necessarily super private. There is a possibility that someone might see that on some day. So those are ways to get to that content if you need it in another format. Let's go back to the channel. Some more fun customizations, which I think people like to do, are if you go under settings and administration, if you go under customize, you can do things like add your own emojis, add custom emojis, which is very fun. So for example, it's pretty easy. You just need to, there's a couple of rules. You want it to be square and a certain size. You can upload an emoji image that you'd like. I like this cat jam one, so I'm going to add that. And you can give it a name. This is what, if you wanted to type it in instead of picking it from your picker, and just save that. And then if you look down at all your custom emojis, there's the cat jam. So now I can have a rockin' cat here. Another kind of neat thing you can do is add an alias to your emojis. So say you want to add, say you have an emoji that is, let's see, what's a good one? I don't know, we're just gonna call this Barfy guy, So that's kind of a fun thing, and people can have a lot of fun with that too. Like for example, I think we have a couple of ones in here. So just some ways to have fun with your emojis. And if you want to find places for emojis, I've added a link to the deck. And there are millions of them out there that you can grab for free that, are popular memes or, are from video games or, cats, of course, a lot of cowboy ones, reactions, etc. So go ahead and take a look at that. And as long as you have permission, there's brands, etc. And of course, you can always create your own too, if you're creative. So that is some fun you can have with the emojis. You can also, while you're customizing things, you can change what your theme looks like. So if we go look under preferences and go to themes, you have a lot of choices there too. So you can have a light or a dark look. There are some sort of default ones. There's some classic ones. There are some pre-made themes here for you. Whatever floats your boat. But what I think is really great is, whoops, that's not the link I wanted. You can create a custom theme, and you can add all of the colors from your, corporate brand or whatever colors float your boat. Now, keep in mind that when you're adding a theme, you're adding it locally. So this theme is just going to appear to you. If you set up a custom theme that you want everyone in your team to use, you'll just copy and paste these values and then send them to them, and they can add them to their workspace so that everyone is looking at the same thing. But themes are kind of personal, and if people want to do their own thing, that's also very cool. One other thing you can check out here, which some people find more interesting than others, under tools, there's some analytics that you can look at with Slack. And I don't know, you can look at that in your time. I want to get on to some of the other stuff that we're looking at, but just as a heads up, that's something that's available too. Okay, so getting into reminders and calendars. This is a fun one. So if you want to manage yourself a little bit, you can send yourself some reminders. So maybe you want to remember to send in your timesheet on Friday. So it's slash remind. I cannot type in public. Oops, I'm sorry. Look what I didn't do. The syntax is you have to say not only who or what, you have to say when. So I need to say submit my timesheet on Friday. So now I have a reminder that at 9 a.m. on Friday, I will get a reminder. Maybe I need to be reminded constantly about my timesheet though. So if I say every Friday, then I will get a reminder every Friday, which is great. Maybe someone came in and started distracting me and I didn't want to forget that I was supposed to do something in 5 minutes or even 1 minute, so we can see it. So I can remind myself I'm very, maybe I'm easily distracted. So now I can get a reminder at 10:31 to go to the stand-up. You can remind yourself of a message. So say, let's pick one here. If I hover over, oops, no, what I want to do here is if I go into the 3 dots and I want to remind myself about this message, I can say in 20 minutes, I want to come back and read this, or tomorrow or next week, or I can set up a custom reminder. I can also nag other people if I'm interested. I can go into, I can remind everyone in demo, and this is the name of this channel, remind the channel to that stand-up starts in 5 minutes every day at 11:55. So now everyone will get this reminder in the channel. So there's nice ways to just kind of remind people with stuff. And you can do some pretty cool hacks with it. Like maybe on Friday afternoon, you could make yourself a to-do list and of all the things you want to do next week and set a reminder for yourself to see it on Monday when you've completely forgotten that you've made it. You can also sync up with your calendar. I have Google Calendar app added to this. So if I do GCal and today, I can see what's on my calendar. So that's pretty cool. Oh, there's my reminder to go to the stand-up. So if I do today, I can see, what's on my to-do today. I can also do some cool things here in shortcuts. I can create an event with Google Calendar right here. And look at that. I can set up a meeting. I can invite folks. I can pick a day for it. Say it's on Monday for 30 minutes. Cool meeting. And I can share it with this channel right there. And now I have a meeting all set up. So if I'm in the middle of a conversation and I want to make a meet, I don't have to jump into a calendar or anything. I can do it right here, which is really nice. So those are some of the reminders and calendar features we can do. Custom messages are really fun and cool. So for example, I can add a custom message to correct common errors. So maybe someone always types my name wrong. I can add a custom message saying, hey, did you mean to spell this with an IE? Maybe someone like me, for example, can never remember my company's zip code. So if I put in Slack bot message for that, for my contact, now look at that, there's Isavera's contact info. Or maybe I can't remember our palette and I always have to look that up. So if I put a shortcut in for that, then not only does it pull up my palette for me, but I have my hex codes and it gives me even like a little example of what those are. Slack's smart enough to understand that a hex code shows up like that. Maybe I want to put in something fun with a random answer, like and I want to ask the magic 8-ball. Right, so if I ask the magic 8-ball, will Zoom crash today? It will tell me, oh, it's decidedly so. That's terrible. So there's lots of fun things you can do with this, both useful and fun. And the way you would do that is you can go under, let's see, customize. And it's called Slackbot. And you can just go on here and add, here are all my responses. You'll see that like, if you have more than one answer, it can give you a random result. If you have only one answer, it will give you that result. And it's pretty straightforward. Like if someone says, bye, you can say farewell or whatever it is that you want to add to this. So these are fun and easy to add and can be very handy too. The next one that I want to talk a little bit about is search. I think people get a little frustrated by search sometimes in Slack. But there are a lot of ways you can modify search. You can use from, you can use to, in, on, during, etc. to kind of make your search a little bit more powerful. It's never going to be Google search, but I do think that there are some ways to make it better. And you also can add those modifiers here. You don't have to type them in if you can't remember them. So if you want to type in a channel, etc., that's kind of handy. Let's go to looking at some apps. Those are always fun. So for apps, there are a lot of apps you can add, and I've added a few to this demo. You can add any to your own as well. So for example, if I add, let's see, if I want to add Giphy and say, this is fine, it will right away drop that right in there. If I want to search for one, oops, I got to use the // that's the key, it's a slash command. I want to find a specific one, I can search for something specific. But if I just do it by itself, that's what I wanted to do. It will give me a little search and I can look for that Homer one here as well, and it will bring me one. You can also set it so that it pre-approves it before. You can, there's a couple of, you see you can shuffle or do whatever. And you can also set it for like G-rated only or all, etc., because this is work after all. You can add, there's some great apps for just handy things like get your weather forecast for Boston. Look at that, it's right there. You can add, there's a Twitter app integration, which is pretty cool, which you can subscribe to and have all of your tweets come into a channel. So if maybe you have a client that tweets a lot that you're watching, or maybe you want your own corporate tweets to come into a channel, they will all come right here as you set it up. That's a nice feature to have. You do want to keep in mind that when you set this up, you'll be using somebody's Twitter account to set it up. So if that person leaves your organization, this will stop working. So try to use something that is either create a Twitter account just for this purpose or use your company's Twitter account. Another really nice one is the GitHub app. I know a lot of you probably use GitHub. So if you look, you can have GitHub notify you and send all notifications for a particular project, maybe to a channel. This is really handy, just even if you're just kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of a project and not necessarily in it, or also if you're really deep in it, you can see when someone opens an issue or if there's a new commit or what's going on. And then you can do some other really interesting things with it. Like you could, you do, oops, GitHub, let's see, it's open. And then if you say the owner and the name of the repo, you can open an issue right here in Slack, which is pretty nice. So you can add labels, etc. And then that opens it for you right up in GitHub. So you don't even have to leave Slack for that. There's tons of other things you can do, like you can trigger a deployment right from here. So if you just look at a lot of these integrations, if you just do the name of it and then, oops, help, then you'll see some of the things that you can do. Let's see, what's another nice one I can show you? One really handy one is if you guys use Zoom, if you add that app, oops, you can launch Zoom right in the channel. So that's pretty cool if you prefer to use Zoom over the Slack call. And you can just, share this with folks. So that's a great app to add. Here's another wonderful one is Polly, and you can use Polly for a number of things. So if you do, Polly started out as like a polling app, so you can create like just a poll for your folks, like what's for lunch, and you can pick a multiple choice one and add some choices. So maybe we're going to have sushi, or maybe the other choice is pizza, and you want your team to vote. So you can create that and send it to, see, we put it in this channel here. So we're going to post it in the channel. So that's nice. People can vote if they want sushi or pizza for lunch, and I'm going to vote for sushi, and then you can see the results. But Polly can do a lot more stuff than that, which is one of my favorite things you can do with it is you can actually create like a stand-up with it. And what you can do is you can set up the title and add your 3 questions. You can add, have people indicate if they're blocked or need assistance. You can add comments. And then you can set that. So maybe you add it to like, your project channel and how often it is. We do them every day at 9 a.m. and here's a starting date. So once it's scheduled, then that will launch. You can see like what a test one might look like. So I DM one to myself just to see how it looks. Oops, I'm gonna leave. And I don't know, I think because I canceled out, it doesn't show, but that's like another cool function that you can use. I think that's very handy. What was the last one I was going to show? Oh, Harvest is also great. If you guys use Harvest for tracking time, that's a wonderful one. You can do start a timer in Harvest just by with Harvest Start. And you can pick what project you're billing to and what task you're doing. And it says, all right, it starts a timer. You can also stop the timer this way. You can do Harvest log and log your time. So I want to say 1.5 hours, and I'm going to log that to a project doing, whatever I'm doing. And you can also look at a quick peek at your budget for that project. So, which is kind of neat. So let me look at Project X's budget. Look at that, I've spent 24.5 hours on it. So that's just like a nice little way to quickly update folks. This graph, I think, gets a little better with time. I just set this up so it doesn't really show that much data. So there's so many apps and you manage them here and you can, browse them. There's like, these are sort of some key ones here that are connected, or you can just go all the way into this app directory. And find all sorts of really wonderful apps to expand your usage of Slack. I just go ahead and take a look at that on your own. I link to that in the deck. You can also write your own. If you're interested in doing that, there is an API here, which is very straightforward and very useful to put together your own apps. And then the last thing I want to show real quick is workflows. Workflows are a no-code solution. They're based on triggers and actions. You can only do them on paid versions, but there are free templates that are available. I think that's probably a whole other talk putting together these, but they're pretty cool. You can do so much with it. So for example, let me just show you, give you a taste of how it looks. If you wanted to set up a workflow to create requests, you can create like a shortcut, you can create a form, you can send a message. I was going to spend a little more time on this, but it looks like we're really close to the end of time and I want to leave a couple minutes for questions. But again, I will encourage you to take a look at at some of the templates. Basically, you just download a JSON file and then configure it to suit your workspace. And again, if you want to build your own, Slack gives you a lot of great information on how to do that. So there's a lot online that's available, and those links are available in this deck as well. If you want to find other Slack workspaces to join besides your work one, I've added some links here for places to find them. For example, this is like a nice way for designers to filter by location or group type, etc. But what I really recommend is just Googling. That's how I found a number of ones that I'm interested in. So Google Slack workspaces for developers, or Slack workspaces for Drupal, or whatever the thing is that you're into. And that brings me to the end. If anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to share, feel free to talk or throw it in the chat, or you can just download the slides and take a look at stuff on your own later.